Hi everyone, Jessica here from Paper Ink Stamp and welcome back to my channel. So first things first, I want to wish you a happy World Card Making Day. It's the 1st of October. In today's video, we're going to be looking at Die Cutting Essentials. This is an older magazine that I had a commission in. I didn't get sent the magazine, so I am now just catching up. The free gift you had here, it's got 5 dies in it and it's called Wonderful Wildflowers. As always, we're going to flick through it, but of course, like I said, this magazine has been out for a while now, so you've probably seen the inspiration in here. Nikki did a beautiful card just here. She did an acetate front and then kind of built up those wildflowers with the grass on there as well, which I thought was absolutely beautiful. As something that's really special, make something a little bit different. Yeah, I think it was such a great card. So we're just flicking through the magazine. I'm actually just having a little look there because I hadn't seen who the Card Maker of the Year winners was this year. We have got a commission of mine in here using kind of the offcuts of die cutting. It was like based around, so when you die cut from a piece of cardstock, using that cardstock for something, using those extra pieces. So you can check that out. Again, just looking through the rest of the magazine. For the next issue, we have Terrific Triangles, and that's issue 92, which I have also got as well. So we're going to get started creating today's card using these wonderful wildflowers. I don't know if you can hear, Myrtle's just wandered in with her toy and is rolling around on the floor. So I'm going to first of all take all of these off. I struggled to get these off the packaging because that plastic was stuck to the adhesive that was actually on the dies, but we're going to be making a 5x7 card here. Now, I had a fantastic idea when I first seen these, and it was to use it in a silhouette way. I'm trying to use my inks a little bit more, so we're going to do some Distress Oxide ink blending for our background, and then we're going to die cut these from some black cardstock for a lovely silhouette. And what I'm also going to be doing is showing you the inverted scallop dies here. These are the rectangles, and we're going to create a nice black frame around this. I do end up changing this later on in the video, and you'll see why I do that near the end of the video, but this is what we're going with for the moment. So I've picked one that's going to give us a thin border because I wasn't going to have a white border from the actual card base, so I'm cutting this piece to 5x7, and then we're going to be die cutting the inverted scallop from the center of this. So I'm just ever so slightly trimming down my card base so it is exactly 5x7, so my black frame will fit perfectly on it. I'm going to use some washi tape to hold this in place. So I'm going to make sure that I get the borders nice and even here for this. Then I can run this through my die cutting machine. These die cut so beautifully, and what this does is it's going to leave the inverted scallop means that that scallop design is going to be on our frame. I'm going to pop this onto some white card in a second so you can exactly see how this looks. You can then use this inside bit on a card, and it'll make it look like you've got a white border. So if you popped it onto a card base, it'll make it look like you've got a white border. But you can see here, this is going to be great for cutting apertures. I said this before in the haul video, because it's leaving that scalloped design in the cardstock. If that makes sense. It's really, really beautiful. So we're going to ink blend a background. Like I said, we're going to do kind of a, you know, like an evening sky type of background here. So we've got Fossilized Amber, Ripe Persimmon, Wilted Violet, and I brought out some black soot that we're going to use around the edges. So I did have to work at this a little bit to get it to blend together. Obviously the yellow into the orange wasn't too bad, but because they are quite vibrant, you know, and I didn't want to lose a lot of that yellow. That was what I was trying to maintain, was a lot of that yellow color, but trying to blend these two together without dragging. You can see it just in that top right-hand corner a little bit, where it has taken on a little bit of that Ripe Persimmon, but definitely went for sort of darker colours here, like I said, because we're making a nice, colourful evening sky, and you'll see that when we've finished, so you still get that lovely colour. The best way, or how to get the best results with ink blending, especially oxides, but all types of ink in here, but is to make sure that you're getting a lot of colour down on your page. So you could see the difference there between the yellow and the orange and how much ink was going onto the card versus this Wilted Violet. So this one, I think I've had longer, I believe, and this is going to need to be re-inked soon. There is still ink in there, obviously you can see that it's coming onto the page, but you have to kind of work at it a little bit more to get to that layer of ink down. That's one way to know that you need to re-ink your ink pad. So you definitely need to use a lot of ink to get those colours to kind of blend together, and you want to just go back and forth between those two colours to get it to blend together. So I try not to blend out too far because I want to keep the integrity of those colours. I want to keep the sections where you can see it. But you can see I'm just going literally back and forth from all three colours to get these to blend. So also when you see the blend in here on camera, I say this every time, it never looks as good as what it does in real life. These will dry back as well, so they will give you a slightly different look once they are dried. They give you with the oxide, such a creamy finish, a little bit opaque as well. And then to help with those corners and that sort of the top bit, so this panel at the moment is upside down, so the Wilted Violet will be at the top, but I also added in then some black Soot Distress Oxide as well, just to help deepen those corner pieces and that very top where the frame is going to be. I'm going to bring that back in a second, and that's just going to help give it the impression that it is an evening night sky, and I just think that color combination is so beautiful. So again, that was Fossilized Amber into Ripe Persimmon, into Wilted Violet, and then into Black Soot. So again, whether you want to let this just sit, whether you want to blast it with your heat gun, you can do that just to help this dry. But I am going to go straight in and die cut this. So cut it with my trimmer, sorry. So again, I'm going to be doing this to 5 by 7. So this is going to fill the whole of that card front. Then we can pop our black frame on top of it and it's all going to sit perfectly. So I really loved having this thinner frame. I think that was going to work really nicely then with our silhouette flowers here. So I'm just going to take that inside piece from our frame, and I'm going to die cut all 5 of these, and I'm going to do these at the full length because I want to have a nice variety of heights in here for our silhouette. So I'm just going to hold that down with a little bit of tape, and again we can run that through the die cutter machine. Once we pulled those out, as always, they sort of came out and die cut nicely. There was only one that didn't die cut very well, which I am going to re-die cut, but we're also going to do all of them again so we can fill up the whole of this sort of 7 inches, because again, you know, we're doing the full 7-inch, not just a smaller area. So you can sort of build these up. You know, you could do some, I glue all of mine flat, but you could glue some of them flat in the background, maybe some like shorter ones in the background, and then the ones in the foreground you could put onto some foam tape. That would be really nice, and give it kind of that layered depth look. You could use these if you're creating any kind of box cards, diorama cards, you know, anything that you're adding kind of that depth onto. You could use these because they're nice and tall. You can have the tall ones, but you can have then the shorter ones as well. So I'm going to take what's left of this cardstock here, and I'm just going to die cut literally the tops of them. So again, we're just going to have these shorter flowers, which we can pop in between, because this is quite a big card, so you kind of want that height in there as well. And this is going to be great for any silhouette stamps that you have, but also any other dies that you have as well. If you've got some butterflies, you know, you could really make this into more of a scene. I kept mine quite simple, but you know, you could add silhouette butterflies. So any dies that you have got, have a look and see whether, you know, it's got that definition. It really it can't be like a coordinating die or anything like that. It really needs to have that definition of what it is. But any dies like that is going to work perfectly for a card design like this, case where you've got this ink blended background, you could do so many different color combinations. For an evening sky, you could do tons of combinations for, you know, like a morning sky. You could do something quite vibrant like this is, or you could do more pastel colors. Literally, the possibilities really are endless of the kind of cards that you could create. So you can see I'm just poking out any pieces in there that's still stuck, any die cut areas that still need to be poked out. And then I'm just placing these. I don't want them all to be kind of, you know, the same cards that, the same flowers that are all next to each other. I want to vary this up a little bit. But you can see then the ones where I've got the full length stem, I'm using those, like I said, to that fullest length. So they are going to appear higher. And then those shorter ones as well, I'm using those in that shorter fashion. So again, it gives you that variety and it makes the card a lot more interesting. So you can see there's a couple of them, well, most of them, I think apart from one actually, that we have doubles of. And it does, even just not putting them next to each other, it doesn't look like they're all exactly the same, even though they are. So I'm just going to use some Nuvo Deluxe glue to glue these down. You want to just be careful with this, that it doesn't kind of splodge out everywhere. So I'm using the Crafter's Companion fine tip bottle. I find this fantastic, or any glue bottles really that have that fine tip. I would say it definitely is a must for your your tool stash, should I say, because if you are gluing fine little die cut pieces like this, you know, yeah, you want to make sure that you're getting that precision glue just in the places that you want. Hopefully that makes sense. But yeah, you want to make sure that you're just getting that glue exactly where you want it to be. So I'm making sure that they hang off ever so slightly, so I can glue, so I can cut the excess off, so they are coming right to the bottom of the page. But again, we've got that frame as it stands at the moment, which is going edge to edge, which will change a little bit. I'm also using my reverse tweezers, which I think is a must as well. Just to hold these down, because they are very thin, they can be quite fiddly to hold and try to get that glue on there. These reverse tweezers are perfect for that. I holding it majority on the stem, so I can get the glue on the areas that need it, so the thicker portions. And then I can kind of move my hands almost out of the way of where I want to put these down, so I can make sure that I'm getting the glue everywhere that it needs to be. These do glue onto the Distress Oxide really well. The cardstock that I'm using, I believe this was the multi-purpose cardstock from Crafter's Companion. I've showed this in quite a few videos recently, which is great. Yeah, I even used my alcohol pens on it the other day, and it worked perfectly fine. It wasn't until afterwards that I realized that was the cardstock I was using, and I was so pleasantly surprised how well it did ink. I don't know if it is designed for that, but yeah, it did work really, really well. Ink blending on it, die cutting, making card bases from it. I really have used it quite a lot. So now I've just cut off the bottom portion of those flower stems. I'm going to glue this onto my card base. It's not often that I make a full panel front. I usually do have it to be slightly smaller to show that white card base underneath. But yeah, for this one, I really didn't want to have that. And then I'm going to take some thin foam. This is the Time for Tea Designs white foam tape. This is the 5mm. So I think I might have stuck down like two sides of this, I think, actually. And then I kind of turned it over and I realised that you could see that foam tape, which I wasn't really happy with because, again, because I'm not having a white, you know, edge to this, I really didn't want you to be able to see that. I did try to take it back off again and then I ended up ripping the frame. So there are other ways of doing this. You can get black foam tape, which I do have, so I'm not really sure why I didn't think to use it. But you can then layer up black cardstock if you want to, so you could create a few of these and stack them together, use any offcuts and stack it together. What I decided to do, because I did rip that frame, so I recut a piece of black cardstock to 5 by 7 inches, and I'm taking then the next size down in these inverted scallops, and I'm going to make a thicker frame. But then I really didn't want it I didn't want the idea of a thicker frame, even though I do, that's what I end up with. I liked having that really thin frame around it. I thought it framed it lovely. But what I decided to do was almost have that ink blend in show through a tiny bit. So I cut the black cardstock down. So again, I cut it 5x7. I took about 1/8 of an inch off each side. So you had there or thereabouts. So you had just that tiny peak of our ink blended background, rather than, you know, having like the white frame from the card base. I don't think you see it really that much, but that's kind of what I went with. But yeah, it just ended up with a much thicker frame that you can see here. And I still really love how this card turned out. It just wasn't how I initially wanted it to be. Like I said, I really wanted to have that thin frame. But what I decided to do was to round the corners. That did kind of make a little bit of a difference. So I rounded the corners of the card base itself and of this frame. It's not the easiest thing to do, to be honest, once you've, if you've got all those really thick layers together. I cut this when I had the foam tape on the back of it already. So yeah, it wasn't the most ideal, but I went for it anyway, because you think the top pieces that I punched, this bit here, so that's 2 layers of 300 GSM, and then probably if I did use the multi-purpose cardstock, which is also 300 GSM, that was cutting through 900 GSM. So that took a little bit of a push to get it to go through. But it's nice, sometimes it's nice to do something a little bit different and kind of round those corners. But then I also still use that white foam tape. So, you know, if you look at it from the side, you can still see that white foam tape. But regardless, by having that thicker frame, you can't see it sort of quite as much. But anyway, I did like the card, how it ended up, and I was still really happy with that background. This kind of reminded me of a television, to be honest. Sort of having those rounded corners, like one of those, you could turn this card into like a vintage, like a vintage television. But anyway, I really liked it, like I said, and then it was just doing something a little bit different again by rounding those corners. I didn't decide to use any Nuvo drops on here because I know, and I always make this mistake, to be honest, is I know when I use my Nuvo drops on distress inked backgrounds, it changes colour a little bit because the ink is water reactive, and because you're putting like a liquid on there, it does react, so it sort of changes the colours of it. So I really need to stop doing that. If that is something you want to do, you could make your own enamel dot, or like your own dots by getting a piece of, you could get like a piece of baking paper, like parchment paper, something like that, and you could then create your dots, let them dry, and then glue them on. That is another thing you can do with the Nuvo drops. But instead of doing that, I took my Spectrum Noir shimmer pen and I'm just going all over these black flowers. Again, as a hindsight, because I was trying to be really, really careful here, but some of the ink, some of the liquid, it did get onto that background again, in those thinner areas. It does react with it slightly, so you know, this might be something that you want to do beforehand, or you could use like a glitter cardstock if you want to get that sort of different effect. But these shimmer pens I think are fantastic for adding just little details like this. But yeah, again, if you're doing anything like this onto a surface which does react with water, just be mindful to kind of take your time with it. Make sure that, you know, you're not sort of getting on it where it's going to ruin what you've done, or anything like that, where it's going to react with that water. What you could do as well, actually, is we could have added some splatter onto the background of here. You could have done some stars like in there as if it really was in going into the evening where you'd see that. But when you see it as the finished project, like with the ink blending, it looks so much better. Like here versus what it looked like as we were doing it, it looks completely different, and it blended together so nicely. So the last thing we need to do is just add a sentiment. So obviously they don't come with sentiments, so I took one from my Paper Ink Stamp Ultimate Sentiment Builder, and we've just got a simple enjoy your day just to finish this off. And I kept it really simple. I wanted it to be about that ink blended background and just that silhouette, and I love how this card turned out. So I will leave some links in the description box down below for you to check out. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please hit that subscribe button and that notification bell so you don't miss out on any future videos. That's going to be it for today. Again, I just want to wish you a happy World Card Making Day, and I hope that you are doing a little bit of crafting today. That's going to be it for this video. Thank you very much for watching, and happy crafting.